September 23rd, 2020. 41 days until November 3rd. 41 days until President Trump is reelected in a landslide. Hashtag Trump is the best. Democrat henchmen have proven that Donald Trump is the most honest and incorrupt president ever. The fake news lies cannot dirty up squeaky clean Donald. Hashtag Obamagate. Obama is still the most corrupt president in history. A divider of a nation along race, gender, any physical attribute or situation. Jimbo John Galt on Parler, Twitter, iTunes, and YouTube. Or check us out at jimbojohngalt.com. Ruth Bader Ginsburg has passed away. Our sincerest condolences to her family and loved ones. Joan Ruth Bader Ginsburg was 87, born March 15, 1933. She was appointed to the D.C. Appellate Court by Jimmy Carter in 1980 and to the Supreme Court in 1993 by Bill Clinton. The establishment are losing their minds because President Trump is replacing her. The Supreme Court is the establishment's weapon to control that which they cannot get through the legislature because the nation does not subscribe to their leftist ideology. But the public has become compliant and does submit, or at least has in the past. It has become apparent that 9 people in black robes can obliterate the will of the people by wrongly legislating from the bench. No doubt RBG was smarter than most, but was she more intelligent than those in her realm, amongst those in the higher educated? Before being selected to the bench by Carter, she was chief counsel for the leftist ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. She has a daughter Jane and a son James with her husband Marty, who passed away in 2010. Jane is a professor at Columbia Law School, and James is a music producer who went to the University of Chicago. Ruth was an advocate for gender equality and women's rights, and took those biases onto the bench, already having conclusions and making the law fit her beliefs. That is what activist judges do. Activist judges don't have to do it in every ruling, but she did it in the important cases to her side's top issues. You knew where Ginsburg was going to vote with the block of Democrat appointees. She had a good reputation in the media, which is no surprise because she had good marketing. Saturday Night Live had her as a character. Cartoons had her as a character. She even had her own meme, the notorious RBG, as well as an exercise routine. All this for an octogenarian, frail, petite woman. Notorious is defined, widely and unfavorably known. A play on words, using it like, she is so bad. Not so ironically, as it turns out, she was bad for our constitutional republic. She was a feminist icon to the left because she pushed her agenda on the Supreme Court, ignoring the stated purpose of the Supreme Court justice to rule on the law without injecting personal ideology and views. She wore that as a badge of honor. She brought her woman's advocacy to the bench. She should have been like Lady Justice, a blind scale of justice. The opposition viewed her as a slaughterer of babies for her view on abortion. She spoke openly of eugenics, which was Margaret Sanger's founding principle of Planned Parenthood. Eugenics is the practice or advocacy of controlled selective breeding of human populations, as by sterilization, to improve the population's genetic composition. Wow. In a 2009 New York Times article, she said, frankly, I had thought at the time of Roe v. Wade was decided, there was concern about population growth, and particularly growth in populations we don't want to have too many of. That we don't want to have too many of? Ginsburg was surprised when the Supreme Court in 1980 barred taxpayer support for abortions for poor women. After all, if poverty partly described the population you had too many of, you would want to subsidize it in order to expedite the reduction of unwanted populations. Wow. With a little more questioning about availability of abortion for poor women, she said, yes, I think so. They're not conscious of it now. I mean, you have to think pretty deeply. A girl will think, well, I'm okay. I don't have any problem. But it makes no sense as a national policy to promote birth only among poor people. So it is okay to kill babies, and it is not as bad when rich people do it? She loved being outspoken. Why wasn't she asked more specifically about it? She rarely faced a tough interview. Perfect foil. Diminutive little old lady. Bulletproof, even if the interviewer had the gall to ask a tough question. Times are changing, though. They feared speaking out lately openly, and they didn't have to. They could institute their elitist murderous practices as if it was normal and, in effect, normalize it, which is what happened. We now have public tax dollars funding abortions laundered through Planned Parenthood. The pro-abortion Guttmacher Institute states that 75% of women who get abortions in the United States are poor. They're also disproportionately non-white. Although whites are the majority of the United States, they only make up 39% of abortions in the country. 61% of abortion recipients are non-white. They say that 28% are black, 25% Hispanic, 6% are Asian/Pacific Islander, and 3% are other. A few times Ginsburg shocked the court by voting with the strict interpretive arm of the court, aka the conservatives. It added to her mystique because it was promoted in the popular mainstream press as her being fair and open. And they always promote her friendship with Scalia as if that matters to the nation. They promote personality over principle. The left collectively are losing their minds, screaming on TikTok. Pelosi is talking about impeaching the president again to unconstitutionally stop him from appointing his pick for the court. Sitting congresswomen are tweeting how they will burn it all down if he nominates someone. Burn down the country is what she is talking about. When this situation has arisen, a replacement has been nominated and confirmed every time the Senate majority is the same as the presidency. 19 times it's happened, and both parties have exercised their duty. Here, immediately, squishy Republican Senators Collins and Murkowski came out saying the duly elected president should not nominate anyone, and it should be the next president's appointment. Luckily for the country, cocaine Mitch McConnell has whipped at least Collins into compliance, and it appears that they will have the votes necessary to confirm. Looks like it's either going to be Barbara Lagoa, who is of Cuban descent, or Amy Coney Barrett. Barrett seems to be leading in the popular press, but we think that Lagoa is going to get the call. It just makes sense from a political perspective. Cuban descent, the Latina, Florida. Schumer has threatened if President Trump exercises his right and duty to nominate a justice, that when the Dems get in power, if they ever get in power, they will pack the Supreme Court with 11 or 13 or 15 or even 75 justices and make the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico states, installing a permanent statist leftist majority. Schumer, Pelosi, and the rest of them are trying yet again to guilt and openly threaten the Republicans to act against their interests. Why would we think that they wouldn't do those things regardless? All they live for is power. Look no further than Harry Reid doing away with the filibuster to ram through his agenda, to understand what Schumer would do if the Democrats had the power. They would not hesitate, nor should Trump and the Republicans in the Senate. Ginsburg was a radical politician in a black robe with a lifetime appointment. She believed the seat belonged to her, and now so do the leftists. The Supreme Court seat belongs to the people, and the sitting president gets to appoint the next justice to fill that seat for their life or until they retire or are impeached. Her ego was her dying wish's demise. She could have, if she didn't miscalculate in 2016. She should have retired and let Obama pick her replacement, but she didn't because she bought her own press relief puffery. Pure ego and self-centeredness. It is pathetic that Justice Ginsburg's dying wish was that President Trump not pick the replacement for the seat she occupied. Her hatred for the president and lust for power had her sneak off to the hospital and hide her true condition. She often broke Supreme Court protocol by slamming the president openly. Don't we have to question her judicial decisions the last few years, as she clearly was not of sound mind? Her duty and interest should have been to the country and to deciding the law. Those on the right that have subscribed to what Aristotle termed the willing suspension of belief, willing to be brainwashed to believe that they themselves, and specifically President Trump, do not have the same rights as the Democrats when they have the majority. Suspension of disbelief is the intentional avoidance of critical thinking or logic in examining something surreal, such as a work of speculative fiction, in order to believe it for the sake of enjoyment. Aristotle first explored the idea of the concept in its relation to the principles of theater. The audience ignores the unreality of fiction in order to experience catharsis. Unfortunately, the Republicans in the House and the Senate, the majority of them, willingly disbelieve. They have fallen in love with their captors. Stockholm Syndrome at the legislative level. The Republicans have willingly laid down their majority, hoping the media and the Democrats will like them. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say to only govern for 3 3/4 years as president. They were elected to govern, not to defer. You don't stop playing the football game at the 2-minute warning. The Republicans only have themselves to blame. If they would have backed up President Trump from Inauguration Day in 2017, they could have changed history for the better, achieved programs, their conservative agenda, and ridded the country of the failed Obamacare program. But they wanted President Trump to fail. They are the establishment, wearing Republican garb. They all contributed to the rise of the Marxist BLM movement, burn, murder, loot, and their violent comrades, Antifa. The rule of law would have been restored. Instead, what we have is silence from most Republicans as Democrat cities burn and Antifa kills Trump supporters. Silence for McConnell and Graham and their underlings as the country is radicalized. This is the time to give no quarter to the CNNs and the loony left. Trump has tried to work with the establishment. He should instruct McConnell to hold the consent to vote without any hearings. Do not give the violent left, Soros-funded groups, time to make a spectacle a la Brett Kavanaugh hearings, where they were pounding on the doors and interrupting the hearings, let alone allow the grandstanding by Kamala Harris and Cory Booker and the rest of the leftist camera hogs. Since the left has been martyring felons who resist arrest from police officers, such as George Floyd, Jacob Blake, Rayshard Brooks, and years before that, Michael Brown, all their flowery rhetoric now for their icon, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, passing away, makes clear it is the same misleading tune being played. From all information, she was a pleasant enough lady to be friends with, but a rigid idealist in her beliefs that were her guiding force in her professional life, which had a direct cost on the country and ordinary citizens. That is not a good investment, Bill Clinton. It is clear today the establishment left has not conceded the 2016 election. They are spoiled brats treating this presidency differently, less than, showing they believe no rules apply for them, but known and unknown rules for us outsiders, which is represented by Donald Trump. Little Mikey Bloomberg is paying convicted criminals fines to get them to vote against President Trump in Florida, spending $100 million. Their lawfare didn't work in the system with the Supreme Court in the Florida restitution case. So the petty little man Bloomberg is paying off their fines. How is it that Bloomberg can be so unhappy after achieving what looks like the American dream, where he could literally do anything in the world, and he chooses to kill babies, take away gun rights, and upturn the Constitution? Why does he hate America? The left is arming up, literally and figuratively, for this election. Got voter fraud via mail-in ballots. You've got the propaganda, Transition Integrity Project, the Lincoln Project, Bloomberg, Soros, financing Antifa street violence, lawfare in the courts. This election is going to the Supreme Court. And if it's 4-4, if Trump does not get his pick through, we are going to have chaos like we've never seen. A violent nationwide revolution. The downfall of this nation. President Trump must announce his pick and send to the Senate floor for consent and confirmation without lengthy hearings. It is extremely close to the election. It is understandable he has to go with a woman in order to get his goal accomplished in short order to avoid at least one of the left's talking points, where they love to divide us by gender. Mitch McConnell cares about judicial picks. That's his thing. In this case, it lines up with President Trump's, so their common goal works out for the good of country. Normally, Mitch McConnell doesn't give a darn what President Trump wants to accomplish. President Trump wants to drain the swamp. McConnell does not want to drain the swamp because he's part of it. In this case, we don't care if it's a woman, black, white, man. So it's fine to pick the woman to grease the skids this close to the election. Barbara Lagoa, Amy Coney Barrett, both good picks. We think that Barbara Lagoa is going to get it because this is a political season. She's from Florida and of Cuban descent. That does not hurt with the Latino vote. Hashtag glorious ACB, hashtag Liberty Lagoa. President Trump's second term will be better than the first. Mr. Trump will run straight through the tax and will implement our constitutional take-back. Let them whine, smile, and continue what you're doing. As always, keep your eyes and ears open, trust your instincts, and do not be afraid to speak up for your rights. Never bend the knee. Jimbo John Galt on Parler, Twitter, iTunes, and YouTube. Or check us out at jimbojohngalt.com.